Hey guys, welcome back to My Understanding. This is a podcast where I try and find the truth behind all of the, publicity out there and all the trends that may be trying to lead us astray in the health and fitness industry. Something I've had a huge passion for many years now, and something I've been doing a lot of my own research and studying on as well. And so this has kind of been a new hobby of mine that I've started because I want to find the truth behind it all. And so making connections has been a big part of this. And in those connections, I've gotten to know Nick Routson here pretty well. He's a good friend of mine, a great coach as well. He's been doing this for 15 years. He's worked with 3 different companies, has many different certifications from other organizations as well. He's got a BS in biochemistry, and he does a lot of training and studying in functional medicine and health and wellness. He's also a competitive bodybuilder and coach, and he's just a great guy in general. So I do got to ask though, Nick, it's great seeing you. What's up with the pink hair?
Well, first off, Jack, thanks for the warm introduction there and the praise. Really appreciate it. The pink hair, yeah, I imagine that's going to be a big question. So this is how serious, and you know this working with me, we are about
Yeah.
client results. So I have a 74-year-old client that's type 2 diabetic and not perfectly managed, but managed. And I struck a bet with him about 2 months ago. I said, if you can go 1 month without eating donuts, I'll shave my beard and dye my hair, which might seem like an extreme offer, but he was having 2 donuts a day, 3 to 4 days a week, because he
Yeah.
just simply could not find an alternative when he had to rush to work in the morning.
Oh man. Yeah.
So this was the motivation that he needed to get over that hump and break that habit and establish new one. So clearly he was able to complete the task.
Hey, well, you know what? That's a great show of just commitment on your end as well. Of like, hey, if you can achieve these results, I'm going to do this thing for you. As kind of like a little work together.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's the all in mentality. And I've had this beard for 14 years. I've been practicing fitness for 15,
Dang,
professionally, that is. So
that's a
that's how long
big
standing that
change.
beard was.
Yeah, that is a big change right there for you. Then,
Uh-huh.
how's it feel? Just kind of not having anything.
I kind of like it. I might keep the beard off for a while. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I
Okay.
don't think the pink hair is going to stay forever, but
Not
I'm
feeling
enjoying it
that
while
one
it
quite as
lasts.
much.
Yeah. Funny enough, I was doing cardio this morning and I took my headphones off and they're white beats and now they're pink beats.
Oh no. Oh no.
It's okay. I'll have a little bit of fun to them too.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a new experience for you, I bet.
Hmm.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, I mean, I'd say that's kind of a great segue actually into what I want to ask you about because going off of your client and eating the donuts, one thing I would love to bring up with you is kind of about reverse dieting. So that's kind of the topic I'd like to go over today is what exactly is reverse dieting and if it, is right for you for the type of just general individual or client depending on their needs. Um, my understanding of reverse dieting is where it's someone who either gradually over a few weeks to maybe months if it's prolonged or really quickly over the course of like a single week begins to just eat more to try and reset their caloric intake back to its maintenance from a deficit, like a prolonged time where somebody may be in a deficit. uh, and so if somebody has been in that deficit for a long time, maybe over the course of, 6 months to over a year, sometimes their metabolism will slow down. Maybe their hormones might, get a little wonky. And so their body tends to hold on to the calories that they're eating, whether it's from fat, carbs, or protein, and they kind of just store it all as fat to try and preserve energy, rather than just distributing each of those macros properly into the body where they're intended. Um, how does that sound? Are there any add-ons changes you would make to that?
Yeah, no, there's a lot to unpack there. So forgive me if I'm long-winded on this response, but I was actually really excited when you sent over the questions like, oh, cool, we're going to talk about reverse dieting.
Yeah.
I think it's, as most people probably found out when they go to research online, there's a lot of information about how to do deficits, cutting, if you will,
Hmm.
dropping body fat, but there's not as much discussion on how do you reverse out of it. And I
Yeah.
see a lot of people put a ton of effort and sacrifice into dropping body fat only to mess it up or reduce the results on their way out, thinking, okay, I can just snap back to maintenance calories or worse, they just go back to eating how they did before and they
Yeah.
start to accumulate that body fat again. Um, you know, Probably about a year ago, I took the idea of reverse dieting and said, I'm going to rephrase this. I'm going to call it metabolic expansion,
Hmm. Okay.
which I think puts a more positive and proactive spin on it, because that's really what it is, right? We're expanding your metabolism coming out of this deficit or this cutting phase. You'd mentioned in your question there 6 to 12 months of running a caloric deficit. And I want to frame that up. That's a long duration, right? But
Yes.
that's true for most people. They're spending a long time in there and likely plateauing throughout it,
Yeah.
plunging even further into a deficit and getting frustrated with the results or even losing muscle mass potentially. Ideally, we're running a deficit 12, 16 weeks, right? If we're able to lose a pound of body fat per week, upwards of
Mhm.
two, that's, upwards of 20 to 30 pounds of body fat. That's a significant change in the body. Now,
Yeah.
your goal might exceed that, but it's better to come out of that, especially after 20 weeks, reverse back to maintenance or have a diet break, if you will, not going back to unhealthy foods, but just giving your body some time to breathe before going back down again. The reason why is north of 20 weeks, we really see some dramatic shifts in the hormones and it makes the rebound a lot tougher. So you asked, is this applicable for athletes, experienced clients, or
Yeah.
anyone? Reverse dieting is necessary for everyone. If you're coming out of a caloric deficit, you're going to want to strategically increase the calories, focusing more on carbs and moderately on fat as
Okay.
you climb up to your maintenance, your predicted maintenance based on total daily energy expenditure, and maybe a slight caloric surplus if you're going for a lean bulk.
Hmm.
But how you do this is everything, and there's a lot at play there.
Okay. Do you
You,
mind if I pause for one quick second? I actually have
yeah,
a little bit. I want to just quickly point out. So you mentioned that when you're doing it to kind of focus more on that like carb and fat intake increasing slowly. Why why not the protein aspect? Why not do that as well?
well, ideally, your protein's pretty consistent year round, whether you're in maintenance or cutting phase, or even a bulk. Now, as you go into a caloric surplus, you need less protein to protect that muscle mass, and you might drop that to reduce gastric volume, the amount of food your body has to process.
Okay.
And when you're in the deepest phases of a cut, you might increase it to protect that muscle mass because via gluconeogenesis, your body can convert that protein to carbohydrates for
Okay.
energy. But for the most part, myself and most athletes or anyone in the gym will maintain 1 to 1.5 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. So whether you're going up, you're going down, reversing, that's pretty static, probably plus or minus 10%.
Okay.
So really, we're looking at the energy nutrients for the body, which would be the carbohydrates and the fat.
Yeah.
I think you asked why carbs over fat as
Yeah.
well. So if we look at the hormone flux as we start to diet down, we're going to start reducing your thyroid and leptin hormones predominantly. And those are the metabolic switches of the body. So as leptin goes down, ghrelin goes up. That's the hunger hormone. And that's why you feel hungry when you're dieting down. Uh, the biggest impact to leptin levels comes from carbohydrates
Okay. Yeah.
in your total body fat percentage. But we want to start bringing those carbs up to start increasing leptin, which is what creates satiety or fullness.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I that is something that I was not aware of at all. I mean, I really thought I didn't understand the fact that like carbs was kind of that big indicator of how it affects your leptin. I really thought it would, protein and even fats had an effect on that as well. It's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, the fats come more into the role of satiety as well. They're going to help you feel more full, but really for hormone balance. Because if you
Gotcha.
look at our sex hormones, right, testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, and all the ancillary ones, they're coming from fat. Our
Yeah.
body, our liver produces the cholesterol necessary to create those hormones. And that's where we'll see a big deficit and women and men, and especially women, if our fat intake's too low. But we want to slowly tinker that up.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So then kind of going off of like that hormone aspect a little bit and kind of dipping into the metabolism as well. I know that sometimes when you are in a deficit for a long time, it can affect all of those in a different way. So how exactly then would you say that somebody who's been in a deficit for a prolonged period of time, how would that deficit affect like the slowing of their metabolism and why does it slow?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of factors at play there. So, hormonally, your body's production of T4, the long lasting thyroid hormone, and conversion of T3 are suppressed. Typically, when you're 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks in, you're going to see that happening, not off the bat. Leptin levels immediately begin to go down depending on how much carbohydrates you cut out. Usually on a
Okay.
cut, I'm trying to maintain as much carbohydrates, particularly around my training window,
Yeah.
um, to maintain fullness in the muscles, athletic performance, but also keeping that leptin as high as long as possible and
Gotcha.
trimming calories from fat until we get down to the essential amounts. But what you can expect is as the thyroid goes down, your resting metabolism goes down, especially with that T3 being lower. That really helps.
Yeah.
And then unconsciously, you're moving less, right?
Hmm.
We talk about NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis.
Yeah.
Basically, all the calories you burn outside of working out or the gym. These are your steps per day, all your random movements. If you're twitching your leg, your
Hmm.
body will begin to slow that down as well. So your activity levels reduce, and then likely your training intensity as well. You're not putting the same maximal effort into your workouts as you would if you had adequate nutrition. So all those factors combined, hormonally, movement outside the gym, intensity inside the gym, will start to bring down the caloric outtake.
Okay. Interesting. It's really kind of, I like that you brought up like the whole idea of NEAT and just the overall idea of how your body reacts to the amount of calories that you're eating and how you just kind of start to slow down everything that you're doing. I feel like that can be one of those things that a lot of people don't know about because they assume, okay, we're eating less, we should just be losing weight constantly. Let me just kind of keep cutting calories. Um, and they don't necessarily realize the fact that as you eat less, your body just naturally starts to fatigue itself, and you're always looking for ways to try and relax and not burn as many calories.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't realize that they're burning calories the whole day. So it's just like, oh, I'm just relaxing. I'm just leaning up against a wall. When in reality, it's like, well, you're actually just not burning as many calories because you're trying to be at rest.
Yeah, the body's amazing at survival. It's going to do whatever it takes to lower energy expenditure so it can meet the calorie intake.
Yeah.
That's why I see with a lot of people, even up until maybe 10 years ago in bodybuilding, tracking your daily steps wasn't a big thing. In
Hmm.
fact, my last two preps, I had to do very little cardio. I just maintained a high step balance, 12, 14K a day with the appropriate deficit and intense training sessions. I was able to get to stage lean.
Yeah.
So if you're reducing your calories, you're cutting food out, and you're not keeping the other variables constant, i.e., your training, frequency, intensity, and your daily movement, you might be lowering that deficit and it might not be as big as you think.
Yeah. So kind of that's an interesting point. I'm curious to as a follow-up question for that. So then is there kind of a way to know either how much your metabolism slows down by and why is there like a for somebody whose idea is like to just kind of keep cutting calories, like let's say somebody is they're in a deficit, what is I'm trying to figure out how to say that properly, I guess.
Yeah.
What would be almost too low of a calorie? Like why would you not want to keep just cutting calories? Because there's that idea of calories in, calories out, you'll constantly be losing. Why is that not a good thing? I mean,
Oof. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a great question. And that's a lot of people's strategies. Let me just keep cutting, keep
yeah.
cutting. I'll address that first and I'll go back to the movement side. So, protein wise, we need a certain amount of protein. Like I said, 1 to 1.5 grams per pound of lean body mass. Or for anyone, you want a quick calculation, 1 gram per pound of body weight.
Hmm.
So let's say a guy's 200 pounds, he needs 200 grams of protein. That's 800 calories right there.
Yeah.
Well, we need a certain amount of fat to sustain our hormone balances and all the essential functions of the body. That might be around 60 grams of fat,
Hmm.
give or take, right? So you multiply that by 9, that's 540. So we're already at 1,340 calories right there. Now, we could go for keto, right, and have almost no carbohydrates, under 50 grams a day of starches. But that's going to severely tank performance. You're going to be a lot more exposed to muscle wasting. So right there, if you're having at least 100, 150 grams of carbs a day to replenish the glycogen stores in our body, liver and
Yeah.
muscle, you can tack on another 400 to 600 calories.
Okay.
So a 200-pound guy might need, at bare minimum, 1,800, 2,000 calories a day. A woman might be somewhere around 1,000 to 1,200.
Hmm.
And if we go below that, your body will stop burning body fat. It's going to actually start cannibalizing muscle mass. And then that's its way of ultimately lowering your caloric needs or your metabolism.
Yeah.
And I think we saw that a lot with like the GLP-1 drugs when they first came out, Ozempic, tirzepatide, and a lot of them. People were not eating enough calories, period. And they're losing 4 pounds of muscle for every 6 pounds of fat,
Yeah.
which we don't want to happen. So the point to your question, do not continue to cut down. Yeah, you're going to have the unintended effects that you want. And then let me tell you, it's a lot harder to gain muscle than burn fat off.
That's very true. Yeah. I think that's a very good point that you bring up too. I feel like a lot of people, I mean, just in my own years, and I'm sure you've experienced this a lot more, but you get a lot of people who talk about how they don't want to, bulk up too quickly or, put on too much size. And it's kind of like they don't really realize, okay, that's a lot harder to do than you think it is because
Yep.
it is much easier to put on fat than it is muscle. So,
You can lose 8 to 10 pounds of fat a month safely. You're lucky to gain 1 to 2 pounds of muscle.
yeah.
You can imagine that time horizon. And that goes back to our conversation around metabolic expansion, reverse dieting. You need to get up to your maintenance calories or slightly above before you start your cut,
Yeah.
right? So we think of it as like a cutting phase coming down, reverse dieting coming up. It's really a loop, right? You're
Mhm.
going back in. So I'm going through my deficit. I'm coming back out through my reverse. I'm holding that for a certain period of time before maybe I start my next deficit. Or I stay in maintenance for a long time if my goal is to maintain my body composition.
Hmm. So then do you have like a recommendation, like on kind of like a timeline, let's say, like if somebody has been in that deficit for a bit, what would you recommend as like a good time frame for somebody to try and start doing like a reverse diet or something like that? What would you recommend as a good
Yeah.
like
So let's say you're
weeks?
coming out of 12, 20 weeks, ideally, of a cut, a deficit here. You're going to want to implement the reverse right off the bat, right?
Yeah.
So the last week of your cut is going to be followed by the first week of your reverse. And, at large, the time spent in a certain area or a certain zone for the body is going to be related to the amount of time it takes to rebound out of that. And what I
Okay.
mean by that is if I'm in a deficit for 20 weeks, probably it's going to take me at least 10, maybe upwards of 20 weeks to reverse back out of it properly from like a hormone standpoint,
Dang.
satiety,
Okay.
energy, all that. It just depends on how well you execute it and if there's any underlying conditions. Um, when you come out of that reverse, there's a lot of things at play. Your insulin sensitivity is super high because your
Hmm.
carbs have been lower.
Okay.
Your metabolism is slowing, ramping back up, so it's not ready to take on this huge amount of calories.
Yeah.
So in general, 100 to 150 calories per week of an increase is ideal. And you're going to use a couple things to determine, do I bump that every week? Do I hold? So as you increase your calories, you're going to increase your weight. We should
Hmm.
maybe see half a pound of weight increase per week. If we're going north of that, don't increase. Hold it for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks until your body settles back down.
Okay.
Or maybe we added more than those calories and it's a little bit too much. We have to pull back. And you look in the mirror, you check your weight, you see your training performance. It should be going up. If we're not seeing the training performance increase with food, probably not eating the right foods or eating the foods the right way.
Yeah.
So those are all things you have to consider. And just remember too, that weight gain isn't body fat, that's water and carbs or glycogen in the muscle.
Hmm.
So we do expect you to come out of your deficit into that reverse, gain glycogen, water source in the body, maybe a little bit of body fat. But if we can be disciplined on it, you can really preserve a lot of your leanness.
Hmm. Interesting that you bring that up. So for is there are there any kind of like telltale signs, I would say, for somebody who doesn't have access to maybe like a scale or an in-body type of test that can give you a good breakdown of like the biometrics in your body? Is there a good like maybe physical way to telltale how much of what you're gaining might be from like water or from fat or from just like lean mass?
Well, the simplest one's the mirror. If you don't have access to a scale or any kind of software like that, or let alone an in-body, um, that's the simple, effective way. You can see in the mirror, do I look like I'm maintaining the leanness I had?
Hmm.
And I look a little bit fuller, my muscles look bigger. That's a great sign. If you look softer, more watery, that might be a sign that you're not partitioning the nutrients properly. You're storing more body fat.
Hmm.
I can tell you about my reverse in 2024. I was good for the first 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I had a photo shoot in Hawaii scheduled. And then the day after, I had 2 days of pretty much free eating. I didn't go crazy, but I definitely enjoyed myself. Well, I shut up almost 20 pounds. I'm not even exaggerating. Right
Wow.
now,
Okay.
probably I had cookies, maybe a few beers, and I was eating on the island, just free eating, not really thinking much of it. And that's the example you'll see, the edema and the swelling. And that
Yeah.
comes from the insulin. So when your body's not used to handling that many carbs and you dump it in there all at once,
Yeah.
insulin surges, and you get the negative side effects of it, right?
Hmm.
And then the important thing too is if you eat a high fat content with a high carb content, the high carbs signal your body to start burning carbohydrates,
Hmm.
which tells the body store that fat you just ate.
Yeah. Which is
So
the
you got
opposite of what you're kind of looking for.
exactly. That's why you got to increase them slowly and favor the carbs a little bit more. And it even comes down to your meal planning. If you're
Hmm.
going to have a meal that's, anchored more in fat, for example, maybe your first meal of the day, so you have more satiety throughout the day, you're going to want to drop the carb intake, or you have a higher fiber content in that carb source. Like my first meal is oat bran.
Hmm.
It has a ton of fiber, even a little bit more than oatmeal, although they're similar. And I have a lot more almond butter. But my training window, when I have my highest carb intake, I have very little fats because
Yeah.
I want the body to use the carbohydrates and not store the dietary fats I'm eating.
Hmm. Okay. So then, sorry, were you about to?
No, go ahead, ask your question. I was going to loop back another way you can check on it besides the mirror. I guess I'll dive into it. Your
Yeah, let's do it.
training performance, right? So you look in the mirror. Am I looking fuller? Do my muscles look like they're bigger?
Yeah.
Do I still look tight or dry, right? Meaning lean.
Okay.
And are my lifts going up? Am I getting more aggression in my workouts? Basically, meaning like you're pushing that extra rep or two. Do I
Hmm.
feel really good in my workouts and not exhausted at the end of them or the hours following? You can be very intuitive with your body and know, hey, this is going right
Hmm.
versus something's off here still.
Yeah. Okay. So then for somebody, because I've seen this as well, kind of where you have somebody who might be plateauing where they're constantly having like their scans going up and down where it's like, oh, they're gaining some weight, they're losing some weight, but they feel like they're in, a pretty big cut. What are some things that could be causing that type of influence, whether it be like, maybe they're gaining muscle and then losing it, they're gaining fat and losing it, and they're kind of just going back and forth like that.
Great question. Well, the first thing I'll say is do not chase the changes every day,
Hmm.
right? Stick to the plan.
Yeah.
Your body will always naturally fluctuate because of sleep, stress, sodium, potassium balances, your digestion, if you're having good bowel movements. There's a lot at play, and our lives are not constant, right? We don't
Yeah.
live in a vacuum. So, do your weekly weigh-ins, do that pulse check the same time of day, same day of the week, as consistent as possible, and use that as a guide to the fluctuations that are happening. Every day you might have a different muscle mass or body fat percentage depending on how much water you had, how the nutrients are partitioning, the stress of that day, and everything else. But the things that cause those shifts first would be cortisol. That's probably the biggest contributor. Stress is around us, and I can't believe how many people I ask, like, "Hey, do you want to reduce your stress?" Like, no, I have no stress. Okay, well, I know
Interesting.
you fast unintentionally every morning. You don't eat till between 11 and 2. Your sleep schedule's erratic and sleep hygiene's poor, and you work in a very busy, fast-paced job,
Yeah.
sometimes
But
10
no
to 12 hours.
stress. No
Yeah,
stress.
there's no stress. Because we think of stress as anxiety,
Yeah.
right? I have anxiety, and they're very different. There's psychological stress, but there's also physical or physiological stress.
Yeah.
So, especially in a deficit, cortisol is going up. Your
Hmm.
body is stressed. It perceives an existential threat of, oh my gosh, I don't have enough calories to meet my needs. There's something wrong.
Yeah.
It thinks that you're out in the wilderness starving. It doesn't realize that you subjected yourself to this willingly.
Yeah.
So cortisol is going to cause the biggest fluctuations in water retention. If you had a very stressful week, you go look in the mirror and you're like, damn, I lost all my muscle. There's so much flab all around. No, no, no. The water is outside of the muscle cells. It's under the skin, the subcutaneous water.
Yeah.
And we look flat and soft. And then we have 3 nights of great sleep. We have a good amount of sodium and carbs to push it back in the muscle and enough potassium to hold it in there. And all of a sudden we look great 3 days later.
Hmm.
Did we lose muscle? No. The water balance shifted.
Yeah.
70% of our body's water, and I bet more than 70% of the muscle is water and glycogen, not protein, right?
Yeah. The
So you
protein
got to
just
realize
helps
that. And
helps kind
then the other things that'll fluctuate, like I said, your electrolyte balance. If you had a high sodium day in ratio to your potassium, you might look really puffy. If you didn't have enough sodium, you might look flat. And then are you drinking your water consistently? How many of our clients track how much water they drink?
of Not enough.
Yeah. I can get you to lose 10 pounds in a few days by just pulling the water out, if
Yeah,
not more, right? So,
very true.
and if the muscle's deflated, that in-body scan is going to read it as less muscle mass.
Yeah,
That's why when you test it after your workout, it looks favorable. All the blood's in the muscle. There's a lot more fluid there. The scan reads, oh my gosh, you got more muscle and less
yeah,
body fat.
they're very pumped up.
Mm-hmm. So look at the big trends. That's what's going to tell you how am I progressing week over week, month over month,
Yeah. Are
and
you
then
kind
go
of
to
still headed in the right direction, or are you
Mhm.
not?
Exactly.
That's a good one. I want to loop back real quickly, if you don't mind, to kind of we were talking about just the metabolism over time, and you were talking about NEAT. Is there a way to kind of know how much your metabolism might slow down, like for example, like your BMR or your RMR? Is there a
Mhm.
way, like over time, to be able to tell, okay, am I am I reaching like my maintenance calories? Am I under too much? What is it changing by over time? How do I know, like, okay, let's say I've been losing weight for a few weeks now, and then all of a sudden, like, I plateau. What do I need to swap up there?
Yeah. So, BMR obviously can be calculated based on your size, height, gender, etc. And then when you adjust that for activity level, your TDEE,
Hmm.
you can track that. I have the Apple Watch. It's pretty darn accurate on my TDEE because I see what I burn, I see what I eat. I'm maintaining weight.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, you can calculate out what your base metabolism is because if you're losing weight, right, if you drop 10 pounds, hate to break it to you, your BMR goes down. There's
Yeah.
less body to move, there's less calories needed to move it. So,
Yeah.
my last prep, I dropped 25 pounds or 30 pounds and I had to adjust the settings on my Apple Health. And I'd
Hmm.
look at my watch, oh my gosh, I went from burning 4,800 calories a day. Now I'm struggling to get to 4,000.
Yeah.
Maintain the same steps, the same training volume, all that stuff. So you can use the calculators online. There's a ton of them, and they're all pretty accurate.
Okay.
Um, you can also just gauge your step count, your training volume. Are you hitting those same strides? And those are the variables you can control.
Hmm.
The hormonal shifts, the downregulation of your metabolism, that's harder to track,
Yeah.
but that's where you don't have to get too in the weeds on it. Just keep applying appropriate deficit. If you continue to plateau despite cutting calories after
Yeah.
several weeks, then you really need to consider that reverse. You might just be at your limit or you've hit that caloric floor whereby somebody says, hey, I don't care how much you try to starve me. We're holding on to whatever we can.
Gotcha. And then at that point, if they're still trying to cut, it's like, okay, you're just going to be, eating away at your muscle. Your overall health, quality of life is all just going to start to kind of go down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you go into that deficit too long, some of the first things I notice, you get cold hands, right?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Poor circulation, just your thermogenesis goes down. That's your thyroid reducing.
Yeah.
You saw me over this past summer, right before the show. I was wearing a sweatshirt in, May, June, right?
Yeah.
So your body's just cold and it's odd. Like, why are you wearing a sweater in the summer?
Yeah.
You're also going to experience a lot of mood flattening, right? You're just going to be down.
Hmm.
You don't have the same enjoyment of life. You don't have the same motivation to chase after things. So you got to pay attention to those things. Those are signs that, hey, there's not only your hormones, but your neurotransmitters are starting to plummet. And that's signs that we've probably pushed it a little bit too far.
Gotcha.
If you're not into the essential body fat that you need, like I'm talking 2 to 5% for men, 10 to 14% for women, you shouldn't really experience that in a normal deficit.
Okay.
You feel hungry, but you should feel pretty good most of the time.
Hmm. So then, do you think that would there be kind of a way? And I mean, this may be a very like obvious answer, but do you think that for somebody who, let's say, they have been kind of in that spot and they're like they just feel like they don't want to try and gain weight, but obviously the answer is to kind of go into a reverse diet to try and get them back on track. Um, how would you go about helping somebody do that by gaining the minimal amount of like weight possible? Is it just increasing by the smallest amount of calories for a long period of time? Because obviously, in order to get them back up to, like we were talking about, you need to reach your maintenance calories again,
Mm-hmm.
but you're also increasing, so you're going to see some weight gain.
Well, yeah, there's three options. So you said, well, when do you have to reverse out? So depending on the duration of your deficit, if you're under 20 weeks still, you can do strategic refeeds. And this is where the concept of cheat meals came in that eventually became cheat days, right? Now, they're not cheat meals, they're refeeds. And that's really centered around carbohydrate intake. So if I'm working with someone and we're seeing their weight plateau and we've had pretty consistent macros every day, I'm going to pick out the body parts that they want to tone or grow the most. For me, that's my back and my delts. So either once every 5 days, once a week, sometimes as much as twice a week, we're going to increase carbohydrates, maybe 100 to 300 grams, drop fat intake a little bit lower, and allow the body to supercharge that glycogen storage.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like endurance athletes do before a race where they carb load.
Yeah.
And the reason why we don't just increase the carbs consistently throughout that whole week is you get this super compensation going on. So when I was averaging maybe 250 grams of carbs a day on my prep, and I'd shot up to 500 or 550, my muscles overcompensated. They stored more glycogen than they normally would if I just averaged that out over the whole week.
Gotcha.
And then that will spike leptin levels, increase metabolism. And it's funny because we'll see a lot of times with clients, we give them a refeed, they drop a pound or two the next day.
Yeah.
Which is counterintuitive. Oh my God, I ate more food and I lost weight. Yeah, your body said, okay, let go. We can burn off some more fat. You turn on the furnaces and you're still in that same deficit.
Okay. So that's kind of just like the idea of, that sounds like a very similar idea to kind of just carb cycling throughout the week,
Mm-hmm.
basically.
Yeah. The only difference is carb cycling. It is a form of carb cycling. You may only have to do refeeds periodically or as needed, or you may intentionally do them, right? So that's where the carb cycling comes in. Maybe I have my rest days are lower carb intakes, my train days are higher, or I might more advanced have it staggered where I have 2 high carb days, 2 moderate, 2 low. So I have 2 rest days that are lower carbs, 2 moderate days on muscle groups that are more pronounced or more developed, and 2 high carb days on the areas I'm trying to bring up more of. And it just depends on your ability to control your nutrition, track your food, right? Mm-hmm. For most clients, I'm like, okay, let's have linear macros, and then we'll just drop refeeds in as needed. For advanced athletes, you can do that undulating macro balance and take it day by day. And then back to your question, okay, do we do the refeed? Do we do a small reverse? Maybe we take a 2 to 4 week diet break where we increase calories, not just eat junk food, but bring the calories back up via carbs to let the body breathe a little bit longer. That's a theory. But if you're north of that 20 weeks, you're probably going to want to start that reverse out because that duration. If you're inside of it, you can use the refeed strategy. You can do a diet break strategy. Outside of 20 weeks, you're going to want to start that reverse. And I think you got a question about how much to increase.
Yes.
And how long. Well, we know 3,500 calories a pound of fat, right? That's the caloric value of it. And you can go anywhere from 500 to 1,000 calories per day deficit. You don't jump immediately to that rate. You stagger it down.
Yeah.
So in theory, if you're not running more than 1,000 calorie deficit and you add 100 to 150 calories a week, you're only reversing for 6 to 10 weeks at that point.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, if I'm maybe adding 20 grams of carbs, 5 grams of fat per week, let's say, over the course of 6 to 10 weeks to get back to my maintenance, that's about the time it'll take you to go back up, unless you went in a steeper deficit, which don't usually recommend. There's certainly times and places to do it in a very acute setting. But yeah, you can add it very slowly, but week over week, it's going to come up very fast to where your maintenance is.
Okay. So then for somebody who, let's say they are reverse dieting and they've been going for a little while, what would be a good indication that like they've kind of reached their peak? Like, because if your metabolism is kind of changing the whole time, or your BMR and RMR are changing, is there a way for them to know, okay, hey, I don't need to keep going on this reverse diet now. I can stay at like my maintenance calories. Like, how can somebody determine what their healthy maintenance calories are? And then maybe, hey, they're going to go back on the cut for a little bit.
Sure. So like your BMR will shift, right? But 10 pounds, 15, 20 pounds of fat loss, ideally in your deficit, your cut there, that's only going to lower the BMR marginally, right? So you can calculate out what your new BMR is at your new body mass. And then you can adjust for activity levels, right? So one thing I'll point out is when you go through reverse, maintain your steps, your cardio. You're not just reversing the calories you're eating, but so you can control intake and outtake. So a lot of people when they're cutting, they're doing more cardio, they're doing more sets, they're doing more caloric outtake. And then they get done, they stop all the cardio and they want to start adding food. Oh my gosh, you just had a huge swing. Not only are you burning less, but you're eating more. So that deficit was brought down or reversed much too fast. So typically I like to start adding food in, right? Because everyone wants that extra say, I just need to eat more. And you feel a little bit more satiated than if you just cut back the cardio. Like if you came out of your cut, Jack, and I said, okay, we're just going to go from 5 by 20 minutes a week of stairs down to 3, calories stay the same. You're like, oh, I'm feeling hungry all the time. But we kept the stairs where they are. Maybe you took off one day, added another 100 calories to your diet. You're going to feel a little bit more taken care of, or psychologically it's going to feel better. So how do you know when you get to your maintenance calories? You can just calculate your TDE again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Adjusting for your lifting frequency, your steps, and have a good idea. And it goes back to where were you before on your maintenance, right? It's going to be roughly around the same, maybe 100, 200 calories less at most if you drop 10, 20 pounds of body fat. But what to look for is in the mirror. And we call this spilling over, right? So you'll notice, okay, I'm increasing my calories a little bit each week. The weight's staying relatively the same. Maybe I'm only gaining a pound or two a month. And we've had that succession. You'll notice very quickly when you go into surplus, because over that 1 or 2 week period where you're starting to hit your maintenance and go into surplus, you'll start seeing the body add body fat.
Yeah.
You know, and intuitively, you'll probably get, when you get to your maintenance, you'll feel pretty full where it's like, I don't really have cravings for more. I'm not looking to have more food. I feel pretty good and consistent here.
Okay. So it really kind of comes just down to like how somebody is like just genuinely feeling. Like, do they feel like they're pretty full, satiated most of the time? Are they still constantly hungry, or are they just feeling overfull? Like they feel like they're trying to stuff themselves.
Yeah.
And then how they feel when they're looking in the mirror.
And I want to qualify that's if you're eating a very balanced, well-proportioned macro diet, right? So you can't trust your instincts if you're not following all. If you're moving well, you're eating well, you're sleeping well, you're hydrating well, then the intuitive sense works. If any of those factors are off, you're probably misguided.
Gotcha. Like there could definitely be something missing going on there, and that's why you're not reaching the goals you want.
Exactly. And that's actually something I wanted to bring up to you about the initial part of the reverse, the hardest part.
Yeah.
A lot of people think dieting down to lose the body fat is the hard part. I actually find a lot of people will share this experience that it's harder to reverse out, at least in the first 4 to 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first part of your reverse, particularly the first 2 weeks, do not listen to your instincts. Follow the plan. This is because as we start dropping calories, ghrelin spikes. Our hunger hormone goes way up. Our brain's signaling, eat more food. We're overriding that sentence. We're saying to the deficit. Well, that stays high. And as soon as I add in food, leptin slowly creeps up. And that's the antagonist of ghrelin, right? That leptin makes us feel full or satiated. Ghrelin makes us hungry.
Yeah.
So ghrelin's super high coming off that deficit. Leptin's trying to catch up. It takes about 4 to 5 weeks. The first 2 are the hardest. So as soon as you start having a little bit more food, now I just got to eat more.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to get yourself into trouble.
It's like, no, that's not a bad thing. You're meant to feel that way. You just kind of have to push through it almost.
Exactly. So by weeks 8 to 12, really 10 to 12, you're going to feel very satiated. The leptin ghrelin balance is there. Your sleep's improved. So you're not having cravings because of dopamine being downregulated or serotonin being downregulated. How you feel is a pretty good indicator of how well it's going. But again, always have a plan, measure it out.
Yeah.
I think everyone has access to a computer and the internet. You can look up TDE calculators, chart out your course, and don't think you're the genetic exception. No, this is wrong. I'm surely burning more. Probably not burning as much as you think.
Yeah. It's interesting that you kind of say that. I feel like, from my own experience, I feel like a lot of like my clients, when I'm talking to them, at least at first, about their TDEE, a lot of times they're like, wow, that's a lot of calories that I should be eating. Like that seems like so much. And especially when I talk to them just like about their protein and how much they should be having, like a lot of my clients are like, yeah, I feel like I do good on my protein. I have 60 grams a day. And it's like, okay, you should probably be having a lot more than that.
There's a lot of play there. I always ask, people say, I'm doing well on my food. I'm doing well on my protein. I'm doing well on my water. How do you track it? Well, I don't. So how do you know you're doing well? Mm-hmm. You have no measuring stick. You're just saying, well, this feels right.
Yeah.
So interesting point there. Most of the people, as you know, we work with are probably unintentionally fasting. They're skipping breakfast, they're skipping lunch, they're maybe having 2 meals a day, a snack here and there. So they're under eating chronically. And by observation, usually about 3 days. And on the fourth day, that ghrelin spike is so strong, they go and binge on something, but they don't know it
Yeah.
because they're eating out, they're having a high fat meal, right? You look at some of the salads on most restaurants' menus, and they're over 1,000 calories, right? You're getting
Yeah.
30, 40, 50, 60 grams of fat. And your body's going to crave those foods that are going to be calorically dense. So, why it's such a shock to most people, the amount of calories they have to eat, is because they're eating whole foods. And that's a viral trend on Instagram, TikTok right now, right? They'll have a piece of tape down the middle and then 3 or 4 plates of healthy food,
Yeah.
2,000 calories, and one fast food order or one meal at home or one. It's like, hey, here's one meal,
Yeah.
here's 3 to 4. And I explain to clients like this. I like financial analogies. Whole foods, healthy foods are like ones, fives, and tens. I'm going to pull out a big wad of cash, Jack. I mean, it's thick. It's 2 inches thick, but it's ones, fives, and tens. It's
Yeah.
worth $834. I'm like, here you go, Jack. Meanwhile, I pull out 20 $100 bills, fresh from the bank, thin, crisp. You know what I'm talking about? The blue face.
Yep.
It's maybe a quarter of an inch thick, but it's $2,000.
Yeah.
So that's processed or high caloric density foods, hyperpalatable foods versus that
Yeah.
big wad of cash, the whole foods. Yeah, by volume, they're eating a lot more.
Yeah.
They think volume equates to calories. That's not always the case.
That is a great way of putting it. That's so that makes me feel very like dumb in the sense of like, that's been one of those things that for some reason I've had the hardest time like articulating, I guess, is like, as simple as that sounds, just volume does not equate to like quantity, basically quantity
Yeah.
of calories. And I don't know why, like I try and explain that, for some reason it just doesn't ever come across as good as that sounds. Um, that is a great way of putting it though.
If you want a real life reference, right, we look at a cup, really a cup and a quarter of rice, right? So like kind of you think of a bowl, small bowl full of rice over the top. That's 200 calories, give or take, right? We're over
Yeah.
about 150 calories per cup. Well, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, you know,
Yeah.
tiny little thing is also 200 calories,
Yeah.
but it's maybe 1/5, 1/6 the size. So that's a really good illustration there too. But sugar and fat, which is what our body craves the most of because it's
Yeah.
calorically dense, great for survival, fast energy plus long lasting, is usually very easy to condense down into small portions. Where the healthier whole foods are less caloric dense, particularly your vegetables, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or your fiber sources. So it's going to be a big volume in your stomach. So they feel full really fast. And then when they start increasing the protein, that drives up your satiety like crazy. They feel full really fast.
Yeah.
But guess what? That's the benefit of eating whole foods. Now, I don't really preach a lot to net calories to clients because then you start getting way too in the weeds. If I have a high volume of food, I have to mechanically and chemically process that, which costs me more energy.
Mm-hmm.
So simply by eating those whole foods, you can have the same caloric intake. You'll start losing some body fat
Yeah.
because it's taking more energy for your body to metabolize it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like and that is one thing that I also try and like inform people of is like, having like 4 ounces of steak, you're going to, the amount of time and effort that you have to like chew each bite and have your body digest it, like your body is working during that whole time. And certain foods that are a lot more dense like that are going to burn a lot more calories than, eating even just rice. Like even if it's something like somewhat healthy, like a more dense food that's healthy is going to digest a lot slower. Your body breaks it down a lot slower. It requires more energy.
Yep. And those are small margins, but the big one is the thermogenic effect of food.
Mm-hmm.
It costs me 25% of the calories I consume to metabolize protein. So if I eat 100 calories of protein, I'm spending 25 calories of fat or carbs to metabolize it.
Yeah.
If I eat 100 calories of fat, I'm spending 10 calories to metabolize it. If I eat 100 calories of carbs, I'm spending 1 calorie to metabolize it. So if they eat the same calorie intake, but you shifted over 500 calories from carbs and fat to protein to hit their daily need, they're going to see the scale start coming down despite being on the same amount of calories, which is pretty cool.
Wild. Yeah, that is wild.
Yep. And you combine that with a little bit more of a deficit or increased movement, it's usually enough to get everything going.
That's really cool. Okay. So then for somebody, what would you say is probably like the safest way for somebody to start doing a reverse diet who's never done it or even a diet in the first place? Because I will say one thing that you had brought up earlier was how even with just a regular diet where you're supposed to be, anywhere from that 500 to 1000 calorie deficit, that even with those you should gradually decrease. What would you say is probably the biggest risk of either increasing too quickly or decreasing too quickly?
Um, well, increasing too quickly, edema, swelling, just this rapid onset of body fat gain, you're unable to partition nutrients properly, which leads to insulin resistance, right? You're trending towards diabetes. You won't likely get there unless you're on it for a long enough time, but you're basically undoing all the progress that you want to do. You're sending
Yeah.
your body into shock. And depending on the food, it can send, stuff into your cholesterol levels. HDL is too low, LDL is too high, the ratio is off, triglycerides spike, blood pressure increases. When you have too much, the blood pressure issue in America is not because of salt, it's because of insulin and
Hmm.
carbs. Insulin creates a reuptake of sodium back into the kidneys, which retains water, which causes blood pressure to go up. So as we get insulin resistant, we need more and more insulin, which store more and more sodium. Sodium's not the enemy. We need to get insulin sensitive or resensitized. So if you add too much food too quickly, you will not feel good,
Hmm.
lethargic. Your mood will flatten too. You will not, like, mentally, you won't be as happy and optimistic and motivated. You think about anytime you've had too big of a meal. Oh, I just want to lay here. Oh
Yeah.
my God, my stomach hurts. It's going to not feel good on your digestive tract. It's not going
Hmm.
to feel good with going to the bathroom, all that stuff. So there's a lot of risks at play. It can be as serious as like your health markers, your blood work looking askew, or it could just be as simple as, man, I just don't feel right.
Yeah.
Now, cutting too fast, I guess the biggest risk there is falling off plan. Probably 10 years ago, before I really understood dietetics and how to cut, I remember I bought chicken breasts. I had V8 juices. I was too lazy to eat vegetables. I was like, cool, I'm just gonna have chicken breast and V8. And I had that like 4 to 5 times a day.
Yeah.
Well, then I'd wonder why every fourth night I'd go binge eat. I'd be like trying to go to bed because during the day I could kind of stave off the hunger I stimulated. I'd go tear through a 12-inch Subway sandwich. I'd have a couple bags of baked lays. I couldn't control myself. And it's, the cravings in your brain for food, water, salt are the same areas that you crave for, that where the addiction centers are for drugs
Hmm.
and stuff. Your body will overwhelm you to go ahead and have that food if it's in too much of a deficit. So when people make too big of a cut, two things happen. They're going to relapse, right? They're going to break off their plan
Yeah.
and they're not going to stick to it. And then they're going to say, oh, dieting sucks. I hate this. Well, yeah, if you're doing it wrong, it's not going to feel too good. And the second part, you're just going to feel like death,
Yeah.
right? If you're not eating enough calories, like severely restricted, you're just going to be a zombie and your sleep quality suffers and your mood suffers. And then you're no fun to be around. And you go in the gym, you can't even barely lift half the weight you normally do. What's going on? These are probably the biggest risk factors there.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like that's a lot of good information to be able to keep in mind because I mean some of that as well were things that are kind of new to me. The whole idea of just having to cut too quickly makes complete sense because if you're just neglecting your body basically is what you're doing by cutting too quickly. You're just telling it like, "Oh, I know that you need all these calories, I know that you need these macros, all these nutrients, but I'm trying to do something else here." And
Yeah.
it's just you're going to be fighting yourself basically that whole time.
Yeah. You'll be, over the long horizon, you're emaciated, right? I think, the thing to look out for in women is armoria, loss of a period,
Hmm.
right? If their body fat goes too low or their fat intake, their dietary fat's too low, they stop producing enough estrogen, they're going to lose their period. Men, your testosterone levels will start dropping precipitously, right?
Yeah.
Cortisol will start spiking. That's probably more in a 4 to 12 week time frame, but yeah, you'll cause hormonal shifts, or we call it metabolic adaptation.
Yeah.
An easier way to understand is metabolic suppression, where
Yeah.
it's like,
Okay.
and you're talking about like, where do you start a deficit at? Well, in the real world, as you know, as a trainer, I usually start clients on a reverse diet. They're
Yeah.
already under eating. They're already in an unknown deficit. Well, why aren't they losing weight? Well, they've metabolically adapted or they're suppressed, so their body is slowed down. And then every client is going to have leaks.
Hmm.
Usually it's on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, right?
Yeah.
And they eat Monday through Friday because they're busy at work, they're running the kids around, or whatever's distracting them. Saturday, Sunday comes around, and they're like, I'm just eating normal, having a little bit of fun. Well, you have 2 or 3 beers, burger and fries, you might have just downed 1,800, 2,000 calories or more.
And they don't even realize it.
Yeah. You could run a 500 calorie deficit Monday through Friday, get 2,500 calories in the hole, overeat by 750 calories Saturday and Sunday, 1,500 calories over. And you just cut that 2,500 calorie deficit down to 1,000.
Yeah.
But in reality, people are usually getting back to net zero, and that's
Yeah.
why they're not losing weight. So the reverse is really where most people start. I'm going to climb you out of what you're eating, right? You just mentioned your clients like, I can't eat this much food, right? So, okay, we're going
Yeah.
to strategically take you, give me a 3-day food log. I don't care what you eat.
Mm-hmm.
It could be as simple as just taking pictures, a rough estimate, 2 handfuls of this, a palm size of that. Ideally, we can get a little bit more quantifiable with it, but show me your 3-day food log. That'll give me enough data where it's not like the one low day, because everyone you ask, what do you typically eat in a day? And it's the most perfect freaking day they've ever had,
Yeah.
right? It's like, that's not real. That's like
Yeah.
what you think you're eating or on your best day. So the 3-day look back usually gives me a good understanding of where are they at.
Mm-hmm.
I can kind of roughly calculate their protein, carbs, and fat. I mean, you can look at a meal, right? And you can say, well, that's low in protein. That's going to be super high in fat, and those are not good carbs.
Yeah.
And I start to reverse them out of that slowly after calculating their TDE. Okay, hey, well, first thing I'm going to bring up is your protein intake and water. Those are going to make you feel full. You're not truly hungry until you're hydrated. Oh, Nick, I'm starving. Okay, make sure you get to your gallon of water. Then come to ask me. Oh, all of a sudden I feel better.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're going to start bringing up those carbs, maybe tempering down the fat if it's too high, but usually it's not. And we're expanding them out to maintenance. And the crazy part is we see recomposition. I'm losing fat while I'm gaining muscle.
Yeah.
Right. So then we get to that maintenance phase. We get the body saturate 6-12 weeks. So the hormones really reset. The body feels sustained. We gain a little bit more lean tissue or muscle. And then, hey, you know what? There's still some more body fat you want to lose. Let's go back into that deficit again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, most people should start at the reverse versus into the cut. Because if you're 500,000 calories under your TDEE and you're trying to start your cut from there, you're not going to get very far and it's going to be very miserable.
Yeah. And that's when it's like, okay, we just got to restart over, basically. Let's get you back up to where you need to be, and then we can get you down to where you want to be.
Yep.
And I feel like that's where a lot of people tend to lose their hope, is when they're like, ugh, I don't want to try it. They view it as backtracking almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to get to the solution fast.
Yes. Well, you brought up a very interesting point. I hope you don't mind. I got one more question for you.
Sure.
Kind of going off of like the hormonal aspect. I know obviously nutrition is going to be somewhat different, like not a humongous difference, but it varies a little bit kind of depending on your age range. Because people's hormones will change over time. So, somebody who's in their early 20s are going to, their bodies are a lot more adaptable and they're able to react better to certain nutrients and just foods. And their hormones are all usually working pretty well. Mm-hmm. As opposed to somebody who's in, their 50s or older, especially male or female, where they're going through like, postmenopause or postpartum, a lot of hormones will change. So do you feel like that there is a big difference in reverse dieting or dieting for somebody who is, let's say the examples that I was using, somebody in like their 20s, maybe 30s versus somebody who is like a female in their postmenopause or even postpartum?
Yeah, the answer is complicated because the principles are the principles, right? So what I mean by that is whether you're young and sprung or you're older, and there's the hormone shifts that are associated with that in life, the principles are still the same, right? We still are going to approach the reverse similar. We're still going to look at the nutrients similar. Our body still process them. It usually expands or compresses timelines, right? Mm-hmm. When you're in your 20s, your hormones are optimal, they're peaked, you're going to gain muscle faster, burn fat faster.
Yeah.
Marginally, right? Not just because you have more muscle mass per se, but if you have the same muscle mass at both ages. But that's because testosterone especially, and then you look at estrogen, progesterone, they affect nutrient partitioning, particularly testosterone. So as your testosterone is higher, whether you're a man or a woman, you're going to drive more glucose and nitrogen into the muscle cell. Mm-hmm. Nitrogen coming from protein. So yeah, you can shuttle nutrients faster. Your metabolism's probably up a little bit higher from just having a surplus of other hormones. Your thyroid might be a little bit higher, healthier, or optimal. So getting into later years of life, if you are having a regression in your testosterone, estrogen, progesterone because of age-related loss, you're going to just see that you're not getting as much return on your investment. So again, yes, the principles are the same. You might have to make subtle shifts based on their hormone balance, depending
Okay.
on how severe it is. And that's why nutrition for men and women need to look a bit different.
Yes.
Men typically are more durable, right? They can get away with having more severe, longer deficits, more trauma because
Yeah.
their ability to recover. A postmenopausal woman, they're probably in the toughest bracket,
Yeah.
for muscle gain or fat loss. So you have to be aware of those. And that's where the blood testing comes in. And you might use supplementation, chasteberry extract, DIM, other natural occurring products that will help stabilize hormone levels. But I'm also a huge advocate for anti-aging therapy. And what I mean by that is hormone replacement therapy.
Yeah.
There's no need to live that way, right? We treat every other disease with pharmaceuticals. Why not treat your health with hormones? The stuff that
Mhm.
your body naturally makes. So I think that really comes into play there. So stick to the same principles. You're probably just not getting this as best of the results as you used to,
Yeah.
but largely they're the same.
Okay. So then, kind of with that hormone replacement therapy and everything, I mean, one caveat that I would say is if somebody is going to do that, you almost want to make sure, because I feel like one thing that I've seen is a lot of people just dive right into it without having done like maybe their own research. And so you want to
Mhm.
make sure that you're doing it with like the correct doses. You have somebody who maybe is there like a coach or something alongside you who can help kind of guide you, because you don't want to just do it but then continue to eat poorly or make, not the right choices,
Yeah.
because then it almost it can kind of just, it doesn't do a whole lot for you.
Yeah, actually, to that point, there's plenty of people that go beyond therapeutic doses to performance enhancing levels, and they think they can get away with everything because your metabolism's upregulated. But that's when your HDL crashes, your LDL skyrockets, your triglycerides are over the top, your blood pressure's too high. Yeah, there's always checks and balances. So going on to a hormone replacement therapy, you want to work with a great clinic, right? So you're going to have an MD behind it. They're prescribing these. You have a compounding pharmacy that fulfills them. So everything's on the up and up. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around it.
Okay.
But, like for my clients, I sit in on their consultation calls to help translate what they're hearing, because usually it's maybe the first time they've heard it or there's conflicting information. But understand that, like, hey, these are licensed medical professionals that understand what your body needs based on your tests. So
Yeah.
you always start with the blood, right? Anything in endocrinology, you got to look at the blood markers. And they actually have formulas. They can calculate out what your dosage and your need is.
Hmm.
So on average, a male will convert 1 milligram of exogenous testosterone into 3 to 5 nanograms per deciliter of your testosterone in your body, right? Your blood marker. Those are just the units they use. So if a guy's at 400 nanograms per deciliter naturally, it's below the normal range of 500 to 1,000 or 1,200, and certainly below the optimal range. And we want to get them anywhere between 800 and 1,000. Well, that means they need to increase by about 400 nanograms per deciliter.
Hmm.
So we can say, hey, about 120, 140 milligrams per week will convert out to about another 400, maybe as high as 600 nanograms per deciliter. So we're right in that target zone. We'll start on the low end, retest in 6 weeks. Okay, you're not converting as high. We need to up the dose. Or you're converting super high. Your body's very efficient. We're going to lower the dose.
Yeah.
And they can literally calculate out exactly where you need to go and test it out and keep everything balanced. These protocols have been around for a very long time. They're very well established.
Okay.
And it takes a little bit of titration to get there, maybe over 6 to 12 weeks, 6 months. But once you find the protocol, the sweet spot, you kind of just keep humming and just check
Yeah.
in and make sure nothing's changed.
Yeah.
And the
I
same for
love
women too.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. I think that is a very good kind of way to put it, in the sense of, as long as you are doing things the proper way, you're with a team that knows what they're doing. It is a
Yeah.
fairly safe way to go.
Well, I just point out, if you were type 1 diabetic, no one says don't take insulin, right? You're deficient in your insulin production. You can't produce it at all.
Yeah.
Or if you had hypothyroidism, no one says don't take that levothyroxine. Oh my gosh. It's like, no, I have a deficiency in my body. My thyroid doesn't produce enough. I need to supplement it exogenously. And the reality is there's no lifestyle training program, nutrition. There's nothing out there that stops aging.
Yeah.
No matter what, when you're in your 40s, 50s, and 60s, especially, you're going to have regression on those hormones. And unfortunately, the medical association has portrayed it as these are performance enhancing drugs, where it's like, no, these are life sustaining hormones where we can optimize health and not need so many statins or blood pressure medications or diabetes medications or a lot of stuff that prolongs life. We're treating the symptoms versus the problem.
Yeah.
But I digress.
Dang. Well, thank you, Nick. I really appreciate that. Yeah, this has been very insightful. I've learned a lot, and I hope the audience has as well. There's been a lot to take away from.
I appreciate that. There's one last thing I want to leave you guys with.
Please do.
We didn't get to touch on, which is, well, how do supplements play a role in my reverse?
Yeah,
Right?
that is a great one. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, it's so funny because, 20, 25, 30 years ago, I talked to my dad and it's like, Dad, what do you think about vitamins? He's like, they make expensive piss. Right? Which was true. The bioavailability was very low. I think the supplement industry 30, 40 years ago was like, yeah, these really aren't working. That's why you got to take 5,000% of your daily value.
Yeah.
Because you're only absorbing 10% of it or what have you. So, but today it's very different, right? We know that these supplements are highly effective. I mean, I always post on my Instagram, you've seen it, all the stuff I take, and it works. But back to reversing, you're adding more food. So how can we have some supplements that help us take advantage of this, make the reverse easier and optimize the progress that you're going to sustain? So there's three. If there's only three I could recommend, the first one's a digestive enzyme.
Okay.
Right? So what does that mean? What's a digestive enzyme? Well, your pancreas produces amylase, protease, and lipase. Amylase digests carbs, protease protein, lipase lipids, fats.
Yeah.
Right? So you can take a supplemental form of it to help with your food volume. I take it with each meal. Bare minimum, I'd recommend take it with your biggest meals. Or if you're going to have that free meal on your reverse, right? Let's say you have 1 or 2 free meals a week where you eat off plan, definitely take the digestive enzyme. The next one would be biotin HCl with bitters. What the hell is that, Mick?
Yeah.
There's 2 of them right there, right? So biotin helps increase the pancreas production of digestive enzymes and regulating stomach acid contents. Okay. So if you have ulcers, a sensitive stomach, or any kind of acid reflux where you have too much acid in your stomach, you want to be careful with biotin. But if not, it's great to take. This will actually just help with protein breakdown and absorption, which a lot of people struggle with when they're increasing their protein intake. Oh, I can't eat that much protein. It's hard on my stomach. Well, we have to get the microbiome to catch up and the digestion mechanisms there. So the biotin with the bitters really helps regulate stomach acid, like apple cider vinegar does, and protein absorption and digestion. The last one is ginger, right? We all know ginger. Love to eat it when I'm having sushi. Yeah. Well, you can get little capsules of ginger root extract. I take about 250 milligrams per meal. And this helps relieve indigestion, increases gut motility, so emptying of the contents. Mm-hmm. It soothes the stomach and prevents nausea. So you got to think, if I'm increasing my food intake, I need to help assist my body with metabolizing, breaking this down.
Yeah.
Because if it's not getting broken down properly, it's not getting utilized properly. So when you go in reverse, utilize those 3 supplements to help optimize it and help your body get ready to take on increased food volume.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, those are some things that I have never heard before. So I was aware of like the digestive enzymes, the benefits of that, but that's just because of where we work. Lifetime is big on all of that. So that's very
that's a whole other podcast to be had there
100%.
On the microbiome.
Yes.
So maybe we can tease the audience with that.
There you go. Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much, Nick. I really appreciate it. This has been extremely insightful. I've gotten a lot out of this, and this was just a great time. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it too, Jack. And I'll do a shameless plug for you. If you guys like this, if you enjoyed this content, share it. Share it with everyone in your life that benefit from this, whether they realize it or not. Yeah. Jack, I really appreciate you inviting me on the show here today, man. This is awesome. Love to talk about these topics, man. And I look forward to tuning in for your next one.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. And, I'd love to have you on again. This was a great time.
I'll be back. That's a promise.
All right. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.